We get home, it's a Wednesday. The reason I know it's a Wednesday because we always went to the library on Wednesday. So we get in the house, we're taking off the snowy clothes, we're looking out the window. I hear my grandmother, me, my brother, and my sister, we're marveling at the snow and the fact that there's nobody out there.
Mm.
Nobody out there, not even a footprint. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And I hear my grandmother say to my mother, Frances, get those kids ready. We looked at each other like she's joking. She's joking.
Well, good to have you, sir. Thank you so much for taking time to join me today.
The pleasure's mine.
My name is Bettina, just to introduce you to me. And the reason we started this podcast is because our goal is, well, here, let me kind of give you a little story. Growing up, I would run around the country, travel the world with my father. And every so often we'd be in a car and he'd say something interesting, some guy on the side of the road working on something, doing something, or some random person, and he stopped to visit with them. And what I discovered in this process is that everybody has something to offer. Everybody has a story, right? Where that they can contribute. And it's just interesting. It makes your life fuller. It makes a world fuller. It's just their experience in the whole big picture is just a beautiful part of that story, no matter who they are, what their background is, or anything like that. So the concept of this is for folks to come and share from their buckets that are overflowing, right?
Okay.
And
All
then
right.
those of us who might not have a bucket that's overflowing in that area, we'll just bring our bucket to you and we'll just let you overflow into us.
Okay.
And we'll take it until that bucket overflows. And when that bucket overflows, we'll commit to taking that overflowing bucket and pouring into somebody else.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I like that.
So thank you for being a part of this. Real quick, can you just give me a little history of like how you got to where you are now, who you are, what it is that you do that is impacting our community, our society, and how you impact others?
I'm trained as a psychoanalyst and licensed in the state of New York as a psychoanalyst, clinical social worker, some other things. But my doctorate is in health and behavior studies. Um, I was born and raised in Harlem, grew up in a poor family in Harlem, and very early on, I knew one thing about myself. I enjoyed talking, interacting with people, and just I always saw something interesting in people also. So I could start a conversation with anybody. And as a result of that, I kind of led me into my interest in people, but that wasn't where I wanted to drop my bucket. I wanted to be an engineer initially.
Really?
See, people who grow up in poor communities, most of them, like myself, try to pick a career that's going to pay money. So that I never had the luxury of saying I want to study medieval art from the period of da 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 because that's such a wonderful. I never had. What pays money? No,
Mm.
what can I make the most money? And that's a lot of people. So I initially started off wanting to be an engineer, but uh, in my childhood, I had a bunch of disappointments and tragedies. My grandmother was the matriarch of my family. It was six of us, and she was the matriarch of the family. And she would also do everything with me, my brother, and my sister. We all 1 year apart. I'm the youngest. My brother was the middle child, and my sister was the oldest. And my grandmother used to take us to library, whatever we had to do, church, because my mother had to attend to my sick father, who had
Mm.
pulmonocondylus silicosis, a lung disease that you get from working in coal mines and tunnels. And he did that for 30 years until it fouled his body so badly. Uh, if you were to be like, I'd say 40 feet from him, you could hear him breathing. That's how
Oh,
clogged his lungs was. So he was always sick, stayed home, couldn't work ever since I was a child. And so we were floating along at the age of 8. And my father, by the way, had stayed in a sanitarium in a hospital for 4 years and 3 months because he had not only silicosis, but he developed tuberculosis. And at that time, when I was born, there was no cure for tuberculosis. So they would put you in a sanitarium,
A sanitarium is
a place where you close away. You know, it's not like a regular hospital. The hospital, one of the first hospitals I remember him as a child, it was called Willie Parker in New York City, or Willard Parker in New York City. And that was a sanitarium where they put everybody who had TV. You went
mm,
there. So, and it was in Manhattan, I think, to the best of my ability of remembering. So, but, you know, I'm adjusting, we're having fun with kids. And
mm,
at
thank
the
you.
age of 8, my grandmother dies.
Oh,
And that was a blow because I didn't know how we were going to make it. I knew my mother had to stay close to my father and da da da. And me, my brother, my sister, I was 11. No, I was 8. My brother was 9. My sister was 10. So we can't do a whole lot of moving around, especially outside of the neighborhood. So what happened was, my mother improvised the best she could, and she would send us all in a group. So if one of us had to go to the library, no, all three of you go. I guess she thought there was strength in numbers, so we did that. Um, and about 3 years after my grandmother died, I turned 11 years old. Let me see. Yeah, I was 11 years old. And 3 years after my grandmother died, my mother died. And
mm,
that was devastating. That was because we had we had a sick father, but we had no other adults and no close family members. So it was just, um, I was 11, my brother was 12, my sister 13. So she
okay.
had to be the thing. And it was rough. It was rough. And then at that point, drugs really hit Harlem hard. That changed the whole landscape. That also impacted on us because I know for myself, growing up in Harlem, at one point, at the height of the heroin epidemic, I didn't feel safe anymore like I did when I was a child.
Yeah.
Okay, so that changed things, and also too now I'm getting bigger. I'm going into puberty, so my mind's kind of changing a little bit and stuff. And so I don't drag this out too far. Sick father, sister who pretty much had dropped out of school. Just she missed so many days trying to take care of him and us and da da. Da. So we're basically just doing our thing. Me and my brother, we pretty much had stopped going to school. Also, we didn't have the supervision. My father, he had no formal education. He only went to the 5th grade. His philosophy was, I'm only going to tell you something one time. I'm not going to chase you around and make you do it. You'll
Right.
learn eventually, just like I did. So that to me was like saying, do your own thing. And at the age of 13, I started drinking, hanging out with my friends and drinking. At the age of 14, I was staying out pretty late. I say 2, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning at 14. And at the age of 15, I dropped out of high school. Someone once said, wherever you have bad men, you'll find bad women. And hanging out at 14 years old to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, if there were girls there, they weren't exactly what you would call church girls.
Right.
So, so I was having quote unquote fun. Okay. Uh, so
You
this
did
went on.
you did what you knew. That was what was around you.
That's exactly right. Now, I wasn't, excuse me again, I wasn't raised to go in that direction, but based on the new developments, here I am.
Right. But your grandmother planted the seed of going to the library of education.
My grandmother, there's a wonderful story about that. There's a wonderful story about that. My grandmother, I remember at the age of 7, we were in school, elementary school, and it started snowing in the early afternoon, right before lunch, and right after lunch, they said you got to go home. All the kids, they emptied out the whole school. It's going to be a blizzard, whatever. So we kids, we're running home. We're happy. We're happy. No school, probably no school tomorrow. We get home, it's a Wednesday. The reason I know it's a Wednesday because we always went to the library on Wednesday. So we get in the house, we're taking off the snowy clothes, we're looking out the window. I hear my grandmother, me, my brother, my sister, we're marveling at the snow and the fact that there's nobody out there.
Mm.
Nobody out there, not even a footprint. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And I hear my grandmother say to my mother, Frances, get those kids ready. We looked at each other like she's joking. She's joking. If they don't want us in school, because so we went and pleaded our case quietly, secretly to my mother. Mama, we're not going out there, are we? Mommy, look at the snow, Mom. So, in fairness, my mother glanced out the window at the snow, and she said to her mother, "So you still going to the library?" And my grandmother said, "Get them ready." So I'm thinking in my mind, there's got to be something wrong with this woman. That doesn't make sense. She doesn't like us. I don't know why we're going out. And so anyway, we go, and as kids would have it, we're having fun because there's nobody else out there, not even a dog or a cat. The crux of the story is, remember, my grandmother died that next year when I was 8. So about 2 years after that, I was talking to my mother, and I said, you know, mother had a real thing for reading and books, and that was amazing. I remember when we went to the snow, and my mother like stared at me, and she kind of shook her head, smiling. She said, "Your grandmother was trying to teach herself how to read, because when she was growing up down south, she had to work on the farm and the fields, and she didn't have an opportunity to read, so she was teaching herself how to read, and she wanted to make sure that y'all knew how to read and that you were acquainted to a library and whatever." Now that kind of that was good. I needed to hear that.
Mm.
And to this day, uh, people ask me, "Why do you have 3 master's degrees and a doctorate?" Why? I think that has something to do with it. I really think that has something to do with it. I was the first person in my family with a doctorate, but I
So
still think
curious.
that push from going to
So
the library.
so you really didn't go to school from 11 to 15. You dropped out at 15.
Well, I dropped out officially at 15, but emotionally and psychologically, I dropped out at 14. But from the age of 15, I was officially out to hold on, I would say about 6 years later, by happenstance, I went and got my GED.
What made you desire to get a GED? What was that switch that said, I'm going to get a GED?
Excellent question. God rest his soul, Curtis Potter, a friend of mine, lived in the neighborhood. Remember now, I dropped out. I'm hanging out on the corner and with my friends, and Curtis happens to walk past one time. And Curtis says to me, "Do you have a GED?" I said, "No." He said, "You want one?" I said, "No." He said, yeah, well, there's a program on 125th Street, and they will, if you go from 9 to 1, I think it was, from 9 to 1, Monday through Friday, and you got to show up every day and do your homework, they'll give you $50 every 2 weeks. And I said, "Really?" Nah, I don't think so. I didn't want to sit in the class no more. Nah, I appreciate it. But the more I thought about it after he left, I didn't want the GED, but I did want that $50 every 2 weeks. So I went up there reluctantly and asked about it, and they welcomed me with open arms. "Come on in." And yeah, sure. Yeah, it was actually your friend told you right. So I wasn't. I don't wake up until like 10 or 11 anyway. So I said, well, let me go up here from 9 to 1 and get my $50 every 2 weeks. I did that, and they gave me my $50 every 2 weeks. But the funny thing happened, you had to take the test at the end for the GED. I took it and ran out. I'm out, and trying to wait for some other opportunities to come out, some other programs, and I got my GED in the mail. I passed it. Now that changes. I'm sorry, that's somebody else. But um,
But that changed.
So I got this GED, and I don't know what I want to do with it because that was like job opportunity. I have a cousin that has a high school diploma, and he worked as a motorman on the transit subway. And every 4 years, he would buy a new car. And sometimes he would come down and let us ride in his car. I like that. So I said, well, I like trains. I don't, I used to have a model train. Let me go down here and see if I can get a job driving a train. Get a car every 4 years. Go down. Someone once said, if you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So I go down to get this job, and when I get down there, it's like a conspiracy. I go to his 49 Thomas Street. I ask for the application for the motorman, and the motorman said, the guy says, here's the application. I think it's $5 or something. You have to, when you fill it out, bring it back or send it in with the $5 money order. But I'm telling you now, it's a 3 year waiting list before anybody's going to call you. 3 years. I go to the action for another application for driving a bus. Not a big difference. I drive a bus. City job. Still get my car every 4 years. That's a 3 year waiting list too. Now I'm a little angry because I was a baby in my family. I usually kind of got my way. So now I go and okay. Give me a garbage man application. That's sanitation. That's what we used to call them, garbage men.
Mm-hmm.
So he gives me the sanitation application and he smiles and says, "That's 3 years too." Are you serious? Yeah, nobody's quitting and people are keeping it. So okay, I go back to the program now. I'm steaming and I go up to the guy. His name was Donald Hamilton. Beautiful guy, wonderful human being. He was the director there, and he said, I said to him, Mr. Hamilton, um, I came here. I didn't even want a GED. I really came here for the $50 every 2 weeks. I stuck through this. I got it. Go downtown to get a job that I want to get, and 3 year waiting list. 3 year waiting list. So he said, well, that's unfortunate. Where are you going to wait for the next 3 years before you can, get your job? And I said, I don't know. I guess with my friends.
On the
So
corner
he
with my
said,
friends in Harlem.
right. So and by the way, this program was in Harlem also. So he said, I got an idea. I knew he was a sharp guy, so I go, okay, yeah, let me hear it. He says, why don't you go up to City College because your grades are good enough, your GED scores were good enough to get in there, and apply for that and wait your 3 years there. And I stepped back with amazement. I said, Mr. McDonald, let me get this straight. I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, let me get this straight. I didn't even want a GED. I just came in for the $50 every 2 weeks. Now you're sending me to college? He said, but look at it on the bright side. I did say he was sharp. He said, look at it on the bright side. And I'm trying to find the bright side. Yeah, well, let me hear it. He goes, you don't have any income. Your father's on a very limited fixed income. If you go up to City College and you are able to enroll, you get BEOG, Seek, TAP, Pell, and Work Study. Now, I didn't know what any of that meant, but I know
Right.
it sounded a hell of a lot more than $50 every 2 weeks. I said, well, I don't know, let me go up here and see. So I went up there and saw, and he was right. I was entitled to that stuff, and I did get it, and it was a little bit more than $50 every 2 weeks, but I didn't have anything to do. So I went up there and I enrolled in that. It took me 5 years to get out of that 4 year school because I wasn't the most motivated person in there. So that started me on my path to academia. I did get my bachelor's degree. I did switch from civil engineering to psychology. I had more of an interest in that, and I'll be very frank with you. Uh, um, Psychology was not as challenging as civil engineering because they hit you with the sciences in the very early phases. I call those the weed out courses because if you don't have a background in that and you are not willing to put 5 6 hours in a day, you're not gonna do well.
Well, I feel
So
like
in
you
the
also
event,
had like a little precursor to psychology on the street corners, hanging out with your friends. Talk about like a study of the psyche right there.
That is why to this day I call myself a student of life. I am that the world's in my classroom, and that's what I exactly. So I enter, and of course in Harlem, you really had to have your wits about you. You had to be able to. I tell when I first went to graduate school, um, I told people that I already have a Ph.D. If, and they said, "Well, what from what school?" I said UCLA. They said in California. I said never been to California in my life. So what UCLA are you talking about? I said the university on the corner of Lenox Avenue in Harlem. That's UCLA, and that's where I got my first PhD because they taught you how to think on your feet, how to assess situations, how to assess people, never let people see you sweat, and if necessary, how to lie to cops. So it was a great education. I mean, it was perfect for that. And if
Oh,
you
I want
learn
the
that well,
cliff
you
notes.
survived it well.
I'm like, oh, all of those seems like, well, maybe not lying to the cops. I guess we can't say that here. But um, different times. So, so in all of your education and everything that you've learned, you've been able to impact a lot of people, especially in your community, because you're still in Harlem.
No, I left Harlem. I left Harlem
Okay.
about I'd say about 15 years ago, but I stayed there most of my life, at least
How,
more than half.
how old are you now? Let me ask.
70.
70. Okay,
Right.
so you were there till 55. So
But yeah,
you're a huge impact in your community.
I did a lot of stuff. I was involved in local politics. I got into the area policy board, and I was very closely associated with the community planning board. My best friend was the chairman of that at that time. The only reason I didn't join that was because I was stretched too thin. I was working. I was on the area policy board. I was on the NAACP and Addie Mae Collins Community Service Corporation. So I was really stretched kind of thin, and I didn't want to. If you put too much on your plate, it's just going to spill over.
Right. So in these years, right? You've done a lot. So what do you think? I'd like to know your biggest contributions, your biggest impact. And if you could go back, how would you might have shifted might have done things a little bit different that maybe we could learn from that? Like, what are some lessons, some wisdom that we can gain from your journey?
Well, all human beings, all animals, seek pleasure and they avoid pain. The way they do it is what determines their personality. Um, that's part one. Part two, if there's an old expression that says, "Everywhere you go, there you are." If I took you right now and put you in Japan or I put you wherever in the world, you're going to take yourself with you. You're going to try to adjust, adapt, but you're going to take yourself with you. That's your good parts and your or your not so good parts. So, so all those things go into all human beings pretty much, and also to your past is your present. I had a patient very recently who said to me, "I don't think you're getting me." And after a year, I'm not getting. I'm curious now. Well, anytime I make a mistake, there's a part of me that's happy because I'm going to learn something that I didn't know. How did I miss that? How did I miss that? So I'm not getting you. What am I not getting? You keep talking about the things that happened in my past, but what about this problem I'm dealing with today? And I said, I said, your past is your present. That's why you're having difficulty solving the problem because
Because
of
you
your
said
past.
the way you're either moving from the pain or going to the good, and the way you handle that is your personality.
Think about it like this: 10% of your life, you as a person, is what happens to you. For example, my mother died, my grandmother, things that happen to you that you don't have much control over, and has an impact on you. That's only 10% of your life. 90% of your life is how you respond to it.
Yes.
My example, my mother died. I could have kept going to school. What would life have been like if I had kept going? So then now I open up this can of worms, or I didn't see it as a can of worms, but I drop out of high school. Now I take on a whole new life, a whole new persona. I'm hanging out. I'm talking slick. I'm hanging out on the corner. So that pretty much goes into the way I see people, the way I deal with people. And I was trying to explain to her the reason she's having problems trying to solve her problem today is she has locked that away. She doesn't want to look at the trauma, early childhood, chronic trauma,
That keeps coming back because the way you handle that is how, and
and
so
that's the way
you'll
she's
repeat
handling.
it.
That's exactly right.
How do you help people? How can somebody learn to be aware of their blind spots? Because a lot of times we have these blind spots that get us to repeat the way we react to triggers, I guess. I don't know. Like this happens and you react this way, and we continue to react the same way because we're unaware of the way we're handling. How can somebody become aware of that so they're not repeating that same.
Excuse me. You have to sit down with a professional. The best disinfectant in the world is sunlight and fresh air. Lay it out. Look at it. Air it out. Let's deal with it. Let's deal. I got you. You and I. Carl Rogers had said, I'm gonna paraphrase, that he doesn't really teach his patients anything. They learn from each other, and I sort of do the same thing. Um, Lay it out, look at it, and together we will tackle. First of all, one of the key things is know what that behavior wants. If you have a dysfunctional behavior, or it appears to be dysfunctional, most behaviors like that defenses are defenses. They want to protect you.
They were functional for that time. It functioned.
That's
It
exactly
served
right.
a
And
purpose.
at that time when you were 7, 8, 9, as this woman was, you came up with that idea. This should work, but you wouldn't let a 7, 8 year old make plans for you now if you had a problem. You wouldn't do
But
that
we
now.
do it all the time, right?
That's why I said your past is your present.
Is your present.
That's right. So that 7 year old still making is alive and well in there.
So when we sunshine, we let it out, we share it, and we're open about it, and we put it out there, and then so you're saying it's very difficult to identify your own blind spots because even if we think we're laying it out there, let's say through journaling, we can still kind of overlook it. And this is where when we bring it to somebody else, even in that process of somebody else can help us identify the 7 or 8 year old, that 7 year old that keeps you making those same decisions.
Right. Well, that's why I said sit down with a professional,
Mm-hmm.
because you write your own press. You already think you know, and so you're going to tell me your story. It's my job to see and find the little gaps in there and say, well, this doesn't make sense. I'll give you another example. My two matriarchs, my mother and my grandmother, died within a 3 year period of time. When I turned 17, my girlfriend was 25. And it wasn't until I was in my senior year at City College about to graduate, and this was my second girlfriend, who was also about 9 years older than me when I was in two different girlfriends. But my therapist, Bill Fisher, bright guy, also motivated me and got me interested further in psychology. Was he said, well, you figured out an interesting way to to have your needs met. So I'm smiling. Yeah, well, what way is that? He said, well, look, the women in your life who took care of you, looked out for you. My mother cooked very well, and said, you have managed to get two women who are older than you who cook very well. You're there, but you're not really there emotionally. And I said,
Mm.
do you have any idea why you date women like 8, 9 years older than you? And I'm going to do what you were just implying. They like me. Maybe they think I'm cute. Maybe this is what I'm doing. I don't know. I never gave it any thought. He said, "Well, I'm looking at it another way. You get to keep a mother figure. They're older than you. They cook well, and most of these people got more resources financially than so." You have your needs met, but you're not in love. So if they leave you tomorrow, you have to leave them. You're not going to be devastated. And he was sort of facetious, saying, "I think that's brilliant." You know. Uh,
Mm.
now, if you ever want to make some progress, you got to be truthful to yourself, even if it's not pretty. You got to own it. You got to embrace it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did. Yep, yep, yep. So the more I walked around with that, the more I tried that on for size, the more I said, this guy may be on to something. He may be on to something. And I started to pay attention to people that I approached, women that I approached. And it wasn't long after that, I would say about 2 years after we had that conversation, the next girlfriend I got was about my age. It was my age. It was 1 year younger, as a matter of fact.
Wow. He just brought a little awareness. All he did was just point it out and just ask you the question and allow your mind to. He planted the seed to allow your mind to to marinate on it, to let it
Exactly.
spin.
And you have to want to change. There's no such thing as being half pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. This lady I was telling you about, because of the trauma she had, and she had to keep it a secret as a child, she was extremely closed mouth. She put on a common front. She spoke very properly. She's an African American woman. Spoke very properly, dressed appropriately. She worked in a clinical setting, but nobody. And she would always say, "People think I got it together, and I don't. I mean, I have so many problems." Well, why do you think they think that? Why do you think they think that? Because you go through painstaking effort, just as you did when you were 8 years old and you had that trauma. You didn't let people know.
Mm.
You didn't want to let people know. You've gotten very good at that, by the way. Because you know what? I think you too have it together. Except for what you tell me, and I know you don't. But I think you have it together. The job of your mind is it's like your body. If you get cut, you bleed. But the bleeding is only to clean out the wound and clog it, so you don't, get infections and die. Well, if you get a big enough cut, you're going to bleed to death. But the body didn't want you to bleed to death. It was just saying we got to send out all resources, and they just ran out of resources. So the defense is the human mind wants to protect you. Nobody wants to say I am nothing. We all want to feel good about ourselves. We don't want to think I'm the crappiest person in my group or whatever. That's why public speaking is such a great fear for everyone. Nobody wants to stand up in front of a room full of people and and look like a fool.
Mm.
So that's why they don't do it. My brother, God rest his soul, he was 1 year older than me chronologically, but he was 10 years older than me mentally and emotionally. And I learned so much from him in the short time I had him because he died at the age of 20. But in that short period I had him, to this day I carry him around with me. He used to get so upset. Um, we went to Central Park one time. The church took the poor kids to Central Park, not Central Rockefeller Center to ice skate. So right around
Mm.
Christmas time, we go down there. Me, my brother, my sister, and a bunch of other kids from church, and we're gonna do the ice skating. I never ice skated in my life. Never been on ice skates, and we're the only black people down there. This is Rockefeller Center. So okay, so I'm trying to skate. I'm holding on to the rail. I'm trying to skate.
See,
And I see my sister, she's trying to skate and hold on to the rail too. But I don't see my brother. I don't see my brother. So so my someone skates past me and hit me in the back of my head. And I look and I'm looking around. There's got to be about 100 people out there. And I'm looking and who in the I go back. Maybe it was an accident. I keep trying to skate.
uh-huh.
About 5, 10 minutes later, somebody hits me in the back of my head again. Now the thought creeps into my mind, racism. somebody, I knew it. I knew it. I'm looking for my brother now because he always had my back. So, and as I'm looking for him, I get slapped on my head again, but it's by my brother. And so I said, John, come here, come here. So I see him struggling to stop, and he comes back, and so I said, where did you learn to skate? He said, I don't know how to skate. You're doing it. What are you talking about? Oh, just do this, and I couldn't do it. My brother came over to me after trying, I say for about 45 minutes or so, an hour. He came over to me and he said, you know why you can't skate? I said, no. He said, because you're afraid of falling in front of these people. You know, you don't even know these people. You ain't never gonna see them again. Don't do that. That's crazy. That's I wish to God at that very second that I had that. I wanted that. How do you get that?
Mm.
My dad had that. They couldn't give a damn about what anybody thought. If it wasn't you weren't significant to them, you weren't giving them any money. They couldn't be you. No, my brother was the first to learn to ride a bike in my family. Fell down several times the first time and just get up and wipe the blood off his knees and get back on and keep right. He just
He was willing
from
to
that I
fail.
learned if we can just alleviate anxiety from new tasks or new situations or unpleasant tasks, we got 50% of the battle won.
How do how do we do that? What are some ways that we can eliminate some anxieties? Because there's techniques. There's people that some people I think are just genetically more anxious or less anxious than others, just
Right. Well,
genetically.
first thing is to start from the beginning. Realize that you are. Don't downplay it. You know, I get so messed up when I have to go into. I had a patient that anytime he had to go into an office building, this is a white guy from the Midwest, and he had to put on a suit. He hated it. He would stay up all night anguishing, go to whatever he had the business he had to take care, and when he come to sessions, complain about it. You know how superficial these people are. Their stuffed shirts. I think he used to call them suits or something. And yeah, we can look at how you got to that point. Like, what caused you to be upset about these kind of people? You know, I understand it's a certain type of atmosphere when you go in these big shot business places, but you seem to get a little bit more ruffled than most people. Where did that come from?
Hmm.
See, if you go to the beginning of where the problem starts, it helps you to understand what happened. And then once you understand what happened, you can understand what your defenses want, and then we can start to unravel it. We can replace those defenses, the unhealthy ones, with more healthier defenses. This lady I'm telling you about, who very secretive, nobody knows her business, so she's able to hold stuff in, even stuff she needs to change. She holds that in. She has a situation where she has to clean out this space that she's paying rent for, but she doesn't live there. The place is filthy. It's really filthy, very filthy. And so I said, well, do you have any friends? No friends. Strike one. The
Mm.
8 billion people on the planet. How come you don't have one friend?
Yeah.
Strike two. What about your family member? No, I have a sister, but I wouldn't want her to see that.
Judgment.
So
She's afraid of the judgment.
the judgment, and that's once again that goes back to that early childhood trauma. It's different when you're 57 keeping a secret than when you're 7.
And everybody has something, right? We all have something.
If not, I'd be out of business.
But if you think your personality is that it's accumulation of it's that how we respond to things, right? How we react, how we respond, and a lot of that is based on the experiences that we've had. And if we think about like this experience of life and this experience of living, if we can continue to to grow and react in a way that serves us, right?
Right?
Versus letting that 7-year-old, that 8-year-old, that 9-year-old, imagine if you let that 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, that 18-year-old in, because my daughter was just saying the other day, she says, hey, she's 14, but she said, hey, Logan's brain is formed now. He's turning 26 in December. And she's like, he is it. And I was like, honey, there's still room for growth. We're always
Right.
growing, and there's so much joy. And I think that's where our hope comes from, right? Is knowing that 7-year-old, that 8-year-old, that 18-year-old, whoever it is in our past doesn't have to dictate our future. What do you have, when the folks who don't have that hope, who've lost that hope, who keep letting that past dictate their future, what do you say to that? Like when they don't, how do you get to plant that seed, give them that glimmer of hope?
Well, that you use the word seed, and that's a good thing. You can plant the seed and tell them that they don't have to be a slave to that condition. You don't have to.
It's a
I understand it's
choice.
difficult. I understand it's hard, but you don't have to.
Mm,
You really don't. I don't know if I invented this saying or not, but I'm the only person I ever heard say it. A man can live 3 months without food and he'll die of starvation. A man can live 3 months without water and he'll die of dehydration. But no man can live one day without hope. So once you lose hope, it's over. You might as well just pull the plug. If you're
mm,
still living, you're just going through the motions. I had a patient a week ago who went to his friend's wedding, best friend in Long Island, and they were out there at the hotel, and him and his girlfriend go on the beach the night before, the night after the wedding. I'm not sure, but they're standing to look at the ocean. And this is like at the tip of Long Island. He said to me in the session, he said, Dr. Phillips said that ocean is so vast, so powerful. I was saying to my girlfriend, if we went out there and drowned, nobody would ever find us. Nobody would even know what happened to us. And he's going on and on. He said, Dr. Phillips, I felt so small looking at that, so insignificant. And I said, no, 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 no. You are small compared to the ocean, but you're not insignificant because remember, the same forces in the universe that made that ocean made you. And men have been traveling on that ocean for hundreds of years with boats. So they've found a way to navigate that force. If you really want to feel small, go and stand at the edge of Niagara Falls and look at that. But they still use Niagara Falls to create electricity in upstate New York. So, no, you're part of this equation, and there's a whole lot you can do. You can either look at it like negatively or positively.
perspective is everything. So a lot of when we aren't able to change that perspective, right? We have this we and I love that he shared it with you. He put it out in the sunshine. He aired it out. He used his words to articulate it in such a way that you could help him give him a new perspective.
That's exactly right. I mean, everybody, most people I've ever met want to do better. And if you said it's good that he shared that with me. Trust is the key thing. If you don't have trust, you're not going anywhere. No relationship, no. You have to have trust. People really have to be able. There's something in psychology called a holding environment where I think of it like a baby in a blanket. When a baby's in his mother's arm in a blanket, it feels so safe, so secure. Um, when you go into therapy, we try to create a holding environment so you know you're safe. You know I'm here with you. I'm on your team, and that's where the trust comes in, and they share things.
So for folks who don't have that struggle with that trust, right? Like what is the perspective shift that somebody who doesn't have that trust because they're still letting that 8-year-old or that 9-year-old bully or something come in? What is like so that they can get into therapy, right? What do you tell those folks?
Here's what I say about that: the will to survive, the will to live, is probably one of the most uh, powerful forces in our lives. everybody wants to survive and everybody wants to live. I used to counsel in Greenhaven State Penitentiary on a part-time basis. I would go up there when they had events, and I was invited up to talk to people and read proposals, all this stuff. But and I've heard a number of guys up there who were real tough guys. I mean, bad guys, killed people, and I would hear a guy said to me one time, doing 2 life sentences, said, "I'm not afraid to die at all. I'm not afraid, but I'm not in a hurry to die." So that means you want to live.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to try to tap into that part. And we had a wonderful, the times that I was there, I really wish I had kept in touch with him, but I chose not to. I don't know what my thinking was, but I was going into the doctorate program and I announced to him, "George, I'm not going to be able to come up here too much anymore because I got accepted in the doctorate program." No, actually, it was not. It was in the a master's program in Columbia. I said, "Just got accepted in my master's program in Columbia." And George stood up and shook my hand. This was in prison, and said, "Congratulations, doctor." He was the first person to ever call me doctor, and I kind of
Oh,
chuckled about it. I kind of chuckled about it.
he
Now.
saw you.
Yeah. Now remember, this guy, he served a lot of time. He was doing 2 life sentences, so he served a lot of time. And when I got my doctorate and I came out, there's a way to look prisoners up online. I think it's called Inmate Locator or something. I'm not sure, but I went right there and I started digging up because I wanted Georgia to know I got my doctorate. And as I'm looking them up, it said when I did find them, it said date of release, and it had a date there. And I said, "George got out. My God, oh my, I gotta find this guy." And then next to it said release reason, death.
Oh,
Death. And George had told me something one time when we were talking that you don't live to be 80, 90 years old in prison, Floyd. And I said, "No, I never thought of it. No, I didn't know. No, you don't live. No, the food, the environment, it's not like you getting good care in here." So, and it was kind of sad. It did sadden me for a moment.
yeah, yeah. That is sad. Um, so, and he still wasn't in a hurry, right, to get there.
No. I'm gonna say George died definitely in his 70s. I want to say
Oh,
mid to late
wow.
70s.
Okay. So let me ask you. So I want to thank you for having this conversation. Some great topics we got to cover today. Thank you for that. And I
Most
love
welcome.
your stories. I think there's so many beautiful lessons that allow us that sets in the stories, and I appreciate the stories. Is there something that I always say before we finish our conversation, right? I don't want us to finish and say, "Man, I wish we would have talked about that." Oh, if we could have only talked about that. And is there something that I might not have asked that you're like, "Bettina, if you knew better, you would have asked."
Well, you know what? It's kind of hard because you asked the right questions. You did ask the right questions. Actually, you did well with that. Now, um, at some point in the future, you and I will have to talk because what I did was I got us up to graduate school, but I didn't go from there into the professional arena of, okay, now I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this, or I'm very good at this. And so, but I'll tell you a quick story in closing. I think you run out of time. I'm not sure, but um, the I get this scholarship to Columbia University, right, through my job, full scholarship. And the reason I took this scholarship, once again, I didn't want to be a social worker or a clinician at that point. I had my bachelor's degree, but I got the scholarship because I worked for this job. I really disliked the job. A tremendous amount of paperwork. Um, it was the Bureau of Child Welfare, so you had to go to people's homes and investigate child abuse and neglect.
Oh, wow.
And you weren't going into some of the best homes in New York. So
Yeah.
There was a certain risk involved with that, and then you get to see up close and personal the ugly side of abusing children and all. So, but this particular day, I go up here to sign up for my scholarship and as I'm leaving to walk home, there's a park on the east side of Columbia University. You walk down the steps, and when you get to the bottom of those steps, I think that's Manhattan Avenue. That's a real kind of a bad section of Harlem. But I'm from there, so I knew people. I wasn't worried about that. But as I started down the steps, it dawned on me. You registered and you saw this. This atmosphere is different from city college. A lot of these guys come from private schools, families with money. They vacation in Europe, and then I'm thinking, why am I having this ambivalence now? Because I hate that job. So if I get the scholarship, I only have to be in that job 2 days a week. The other 3 days I'm here. For me, that's a win-win. I get to keep my salary and my benefits. As I'm going down the steps, I stop and I said, I know what it is. There was a professor who got murdered right up where I'm standing, about 2 blocks up on the same street. I didn't know the people that did it, but I knew a guy that knew them. And he told us about it and said, "Oh, that's bad news, bad news." And I said to myself, I wonder if these people knew that I knew this guy that knew them, would they want me up here? And do I belong up here with these people?
Mm.
Do I? Do I? But something said to me, I'm somewhat of a spiritual person. Something said to me, well, we don't know yet if you belong up here. We don't know that, but we know this for a fact: you don't belong down here anymore. And that was my emotional step away from Harlem. That was my first emotional step. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was going to leave.
Oh, that is beautiful. So, Dr. Phillips, if it's possible, I would love to take another another section of time, if you don't mind sharing that with us and continuing this story, because I just feel like I got a cliffhanger. Right?
Thank you for
It's like
saying that.
now I need the next I need to hit play. If this was the Netflix season, I got to go to the next episode. I can't go to sleep now.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank
Is
you
that
for the
okay?
kind
Can we
words.
do that?
I'm in the process of writing my memoirs. I'm not a writer. I'm more of a speaker than a writer. So I'm putting that together. But I'm doing vignette and vignette. I did the vignette I just told you about. I did that. I could tell you about close calls I had in Harlem, but all those things go into it. And I I try to connect with people on a very real level. I think everybody, as I said, seek pleasure and avoid pain, and everybody wants to connect. Some people have difficulty doing it because they want to protect themselves, but they there. You know, even the most hardcore people in prison have friends. So
It's the relationships. I love that, and I love that you're writing your memoirs and leaving your legacy in
now,
that way.
you want to know the title of it?
Yes.
From the corner to the couch.
And everywhere in between, from the corner to the couch. Oh, I'm excited to hear the next session.